Well, hello there and good day. Thank you so much for joining me at Dystopian Report, the place where we talk about the nightmare world we found ourselves living in. I'm your host, Jesse Pullman, and today is Sunday, January 4th. It's about 6:45 p.m. EST as I make this video. It's 2026, by the way. Today, thanks to a viewer question, we're going to be talking about the concept of alt tech, what it means, and we're going to do a little Wikipedia dive into the concept. The question goes something like, I've got an idea for another dystopian report, the rise of alt tech and how they spread hate and misinfo. Rumble, Getter, Parler, those types. Basically anything that is a Nazi right-wing copy of a regular service. I got you. So, if you just want the off-the-cuff summary and you want to make this quick and not be here for like 20 minutes, alt tech is a constellation of technology platforms created by and for the far right. The gist is that back in the days when Twitter was Twitter and social media moderation was a thing, far-right voices would often get their platforms taken away for violating the terms of service of a social media site. In other words, they would say things that are inappropriate and they would get their accounts banned, and they would get shadow banned, which is when your account isn't banned but your stuff's not promoted in the algorithm or otherwise silenced. This could be due either to direct calls for violence or for more insidious conspiracy theories that don't call for immediate harm but are clearly suggesting that harm should be done. These people who were kicked off of social media platforms created their own websites, many of which you may have heard of. Most famously, Donald Trump did this by founding Truth Social based on a Mastodon code, if I'm not mistaken, when he was thrown off Twitter for attempting a coup. But there are other companies out there. For three examples, Gab and Parler are, if I'm not mistaken, Twitter-like platforms, whereas Rumble is more of a Twitch stand-in. The irony is that all of these companies tried to mimic the social media sites that these far-right voices were banned from, but ultimately the far-right obtained victory over its favorite battleground, Twitter, when Elon Musk essentially coerced himself into buying the platform. It was a whole thing. If you want to know how that's going, by the way, check out Dystopian Report 62. That was a couple days ago. By the way, in that video, I just want to say I got so lost in being mad at the Grok AI for its CSAM production that I totally forgot the reason I was even talking about Grok. Someone had asked me to talk about how it went on a tirade calling itself Mecha Hitler. You know, because these things reflect their creators. And yeah, I got so caught up in thing B that I forgot to address thing A. So I'm sorry about that. And to all of those who want to blame the people who are generating these prompts, yeah, they're bad too. But if you create a machine capable of producing harmful outcomes, you have a responsibility to safeguard people against harm via misuse. You can't invent something and then claim no responsibility. With that said, let's look at the wiki page for alt tech. We like doing wiki pages, don't we? So here we go. Alt tech. You can find this by basically Googling alt tech. The first thing it says is that this article is about internet platforms that cater to extremists. For environmentally friendly technology, see alternative technology. So, yeah, okay. Alt tech is a collection of social networking services and internet service providers popular among the alt-right, which is kind of where it gets its name from, the alt-right, which is really just the far right, and others who espouse extremism or fringe theories, typically because they employ looser content moderation than mainstream platforms. The term alt tech is a portmanteau of alt-right and big tech. Starting around 2015, some prominent conservatives and their supporters began to use alt-tech platforms because they had been banned from other social media platforms. Alt-tech platforms describe themselves as protectors of free speech and individual liberty. Interesting. But, you know, researchers have pointed out that the platforms potentially used for recruitment and mobilization by extremist groups. I want to point out something real quick before we go further. Websites will often proclaim themselves as protectors of free speech, which sounds like a good thing, but they don't always follow through on that. For example, famously, Twitter, now called X, now in the hands of Elon Musk. Well, Elon Musk is a transphobe, and he hates the word cisgender. So if you type cis, C-I-S, and you use that word to describe somebody, it will trigger an automatic warning and penalty against your account. Like, it will not let you post it. It'll take it down and be like, you've used a slur. That's their idea of content moderation. Free speech when it comes to assaulting minorities, not free speech when it comes to describing people that are just people in general, that are not somehow persecuted. Cool. So the history. Alt-tech websites were first described in the 2010s. It became popular leading up to the early 2020s due to deplatforming, which we'll just point out here is known as no platforming, which is a boycott on an individual or group by removing the platforms used to share their information or ideas. In other words, when an account is taken down, basically like your platform to speak, like a soapbox, is removed from you. Banning, including shadow banning, and other restrictions imposed on extremists by big tech companies. Some right-wing groups claim that these companies censor their views. After the Unite the Right rally in August 2016, I said ally, I meant rally, technology companies such as Google, Facebook, and Twitter were criticized for deplatforming white supremacists. That's the free speech they want to protect. Hope Not Hate researcher Joe Mulhall identified the deplatforming of Britain First in 2018 and Tommy Robinson in 2019 as two major events that spurred British social media users to join alternative platforms. Ethan Zuckerman and Chand Rajendra Nicolucci, I think, I'm probably massacring your name, I'm sorry, further reference the August 2018 deplatforming of conspiracy theorist Alex Jones as a pivotal moment. You know, the guy owes like $1 billion through his victims. In October 2018, alt-tech platform Gab received extensive public scrutiny following the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting after it was found that the sole suspect of the attack, Robert Gregory Bowers, had posted a message on Gab before the shooting indicating an immediate intent to cause harm. Bowers had a history of making extreme anti-Semitic postings on the site. After the shooting, Gab briefly went offline when it was dropped by its hosting provider and denied service by several payment processors. The popularity of alt-tech platforms surged in January 2021 when United States President Donald Trump and many of his prominent followers were suspended from Twitter and other platforms. Parler, a website with a large proportion of Trump supporters among its user base, was taken offline when Amazon Web Services suspended its hosting several days after the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol, the coup attempt. It was restarted with a new host on February 15th, 2021. In July 2021, an example of alt-tech hardware was announced, the Freedom Phone. A smartphone, let's use the right words for Jesse, that promoted privacy-oriented features and an uncensorable app store. It found that the device was merely a white-label version of a Chinese smartphone produced by Umidigi with a modified Android firmware preloaded with apps popular among the target audience, and a rebranded version of an open-source client for the Google Play Store, rather than the independent app store implied in its promotional materials. Gee, they lied to you. What a shocker. By 2022, New York Times and The Guardian described a crowded marketplace of alt-tech platforms. The Times noted that alt-tech platforms claiming censorship by Twitter, such as Getter, Parler, and Rumble, have mostly advertised themselves on Twitter. Weird, huh? February 2022, Trump launched Truth Social. Okay, the Mastodon thing. They tried to say it wasn't Mastodon, but it was. According to a report from consumer rights group Public Citizen, alt-tech platforms with a supposed focus on free speech include the censorship of some liberal and conservative viewpoints, as well as routine content moderation on other platforms, creating an echo chamber. Gee, what a shock. Based on the report, Truth Social was found to shadow ban users that disagree with the site's narrative, as well as a swath of other content, including some conservative content. Truth Social has banned content mentioning liberal views on abortion and the congressional hearings on the January 6th attack. So research. Dean Freeland and colleagues, publishing in Science in September 2020, wrote that some alt-tech websites are specifically dedicated to serving right-wing communities, namely 4chan, which was founded in 2023, 8chan, 2021, Gab 2016, BitChute 2017, and Parler 2018 as examples. They noted that others were more ideologically neutral, such as Discord and Telegram. Discord and Telegram have been used by QAnon conspiracy theorists to promote terrorism, which contributed to the January 6th attack. Discord later worked to remove right-wing extremists from its user base and became a more mainstream platform. Joe Mulhall, a senior researcher for the UK, Hope Not Hate, we mentioned him already, also distinguishes groups of alt-tech platforms, says some of them, such as DLive and Telegram, are co-opted platforms which have become widely popular among the far right because of their minimal moderation. Others, including BitChute, Gab, and Parler, are bespoke platforms which were created by people who themselves have far-right leanings. Ethan Zuckerman and Chand Rajendra Nicolucci, in contrast, described alt-tech services in explicitly political terms in a 2021 article for the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University. We use the term alt-tech to refer to platforms that offer a promise of uncensored speech, which exists specifically to give a space for far-right, nationalist, racist, or extremist points of view, and which harbor a broad sense of grievance that speech has been censored for failure to be politically correct. Many, but not all, of these alt-tech sites are far-right communities. Researchers have also found that alt-tech platforms can be used by far-right extremists for mobilization and recruitment purposes, which is more dangerous than just spreading their viewpoints. Austrian researcher Julia Ebner has described alt-tech platforms as ultra-libertarian. It's got a list here, so I'm going to take a sip of my tea. We're going to go through a little bit of a list. And I will say up front, I'm not familiar with all of these. I'm just not. I'll try to describe what these things are in concept, but, I don't know what all of these are. Okay? So microblogging, that's like Twitter where you post 250 or so characters, and that's a post, and then you can create threads, stuff like that. Gab, Getter, Parler, Truth Social. Online video platform, pretty self-explanatory. You're on one right now. BitChute, DLive, DTube, Odyssey, PewTube, Rumble, TokenTube, Triller. Crowdfunding, that's like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo type thing. You've got GiveSendGo, Patreon, Subscribestar, WeSearcher, GoFundMe. That's just great. For social network services, you've got, what is that? Is there anything that, I guess that's just like a Facebook? MeWe, Minds, Slug, Telegram. Telegram is interesting because, I think they mentioned earlier that this was co-opted, and it's got a lot of war footage from the Russian war on Ukraine in it. It's worth noting. There's also ThinkSpot and WrongThink. News aggregators. Those are like Reddit or Fark. You got Patriots.win and Vote, VOAT. Wiki Encyclopedia. Infogalactic, Metapedia, and Grokpedia. Grokpedia being a Elon Musk thing, hence Grok, which is basically just a ripoff of Wikipedia, but with Nazi stuff shoved in. I do mean Nazi stuff. Imageboard. Imageboard, I guess, is like Pinterest. 8kun, online dating service, Waspalove. Domain name registrar and web hosting, Epic, with a K. And civic engagement platform, or Clout Hub. And there you have it. That is a rundown of a bunch of alt tech stuff, a bunch of information. I told you we would spend a minute on this, but we didn't spend 20, so that's good. If you found this video helpful, please do hit the like, share, subscribe, friend, follow, or whatever buttons. It really does help the channel grow. It lets me know what you're watching so I can keep making more of it. I really appreciate it from the very bottom of my heart. I'm on Blue Sky, which is interestingly not in here. It's because it's not alt-right. It is alternate tech in the sense that it's its own website that's divorced from that generation, but it was started in response to, I don't want to say it was started in response to Twitter being bought up by Elon Musk, because that's not true. But it gained its popularity. There's also Spoutable. There was Tribal for a while. There's Mastodon. It gained a lot of popularity. I mean, it was always kind of there, but it gained a lot of popularity. So yeah, there are left-leaning alternates as well that you can use to organize your social media life on, so that if you are on Twitter or Facebook, didn't really get much of a mention here, but Facebook has also got a lot of stuff. Instagram, a lot of stuff that's far right on it. Mark Zuckerberg, a really terrible person, has been since the start, to be honest. I'm not saying don't use these things. I'm just saying there are alternate things available. I, again, personally mostly rely on Blue Sky, which I know is not perfect. I'm not saying it's like the Hail Mary end-all to the problem. It's got moderation issues. It's got people on there that are not with it, and it's got bots galore. It's also got, the big thing I noticed is that it'll label accounts as, basically, rude, that are just, posting cat pictures. I don't get it. I don't know why they're labeled rude, but they're labeled rude. There are bots, and there's also situations where not bots get banned for being bots. It's weird. But I do recommend Blue Sky. It's, for lack of a better term, the best we've got. But yeah, I do want to thank you again for joining me, and as always on this channel, pieces.